I call to order this regular meeting of the Minnehaha County Planning Commission and will begin with a few introductory comments. As a courtesy to everyone here tonight, please make sure that all cell phones have been silenced. Please note that tonight's Planning Commission meeting will be rebroadcast via CityLink and posted on the www.minnehahacounty.gov site for viewing by the general public. Any final action taken on the conditional use permit applications tonight will take effect 5 working days following this meeting unless a written appeal of the Planning Commission's decision is filed in the Planning Office by Monday, April 1st at 5 p.m. In the event of an appeal, the decision will be referred to the County Commission for a hearing on Tuesday, April 16th at or after 9 a.m. The affected parties will be notified of the meeting date, and meetings of the County Commission are held in this same room. First on the agenda is public input. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on an item that is not on the agenda? And you have 5 minutes.
Okay, I have some paperwork. Can somebody give those to you, or do I give them to you?
Yeah.
Just one for each, please.
Please state your name and address, please.
My name is Amy Johnson. I live at 46306 266th Street in Hartford. The information that is being given to you is just an in-depth description of concerns that we have. I'm just going to give you a very brief overview of that information for public record. In October of 2023, CUP number 2351, Mueller Woodhound Yard, was granted as a rubble dump under zoning for Ag 1. This was after a lot of community opposition and an appeal brought to the Minnehaha County Commission. The business has been open since January 2nd, 2024, even though components of the CUP and site plan were not complete at that time. An amendment permit was granted to this business by the planning director, Scott Anderson, and dated February 9th, 2024, nearly 40 days after they opened. Section 1904 of the 1990 zoning ordinance gives the planning director the authority to make minor changes to a CUP, but MC 1791, the solid waste permit ordinance, does not state anything about the planning director having the authority to amend a solid waste permit, only that they can enforce it. Section 3.06 of MC 1791, page 8. Other CUP violations have been noted in photographs taken by the public, such as gate left open and site left unattended, mud tracked into the highway causing road hazards during inclement weather due to the hard surface not being completed at that time, and a vehicle parked in the public right-of-way. These violations and operating before the components of the CUP and site plan were complete and without the amendment permit prior to February 9th should be enough to revoke the CUP. While researching some tax and zoning ordinances, it came to our attention that this business is incorrectly zoned. They are currently listed as a rubble dump and zoned under Ag 1. However, the business does not meet the state or county definitions of a rubble dump. They instead fall under the classification of an RDF, which is a refuse-derived fuel facility. Because of this and the presence of outside storage of their product, use of grinding and heavy machinery, and frequent personal visits from their clients, they do not meet the zoning requirements for Ag 1. After researching the zoning ordinances further, it was found that this business falls under the zoning regulations as I-2, industrial business. Because the business applied for their CUP under Ag 1, the county did not catch this error. So now there is an industrial business operating in the middle of Ag 1 and rural residential land, which is not in line with the 1990 Minnehaha zoning ordinances or the envisioned 2035 plan. All of the points listed above were brought up by public opposition during the hearings at one time or another, but went unaddressed. The county, by allowing this business to operate at this location, is in violation of their own zoning and solid waste ordinances. Also, parts of State Article 7427 are not being followed because the business is operating under the incorrect classification for their solid waste permit. They are not a rubble dump, they are an RDF facility, which carries different regulations. As a taxpayer, I am concerned that the county is allowing this business and others like it to operate without proper regulation or having to pay their fair portion of taxes. Property zoned Ag 1 pay much less in property taxes versus industrial. The county must follow their own ordinances and remedy these mistakes. We have requested that Mr. Karski and Mr. Anderson send our information to the state's attorney for review, which to my understanding has been done. Thank you.
Anyone else care to speak to an item that's not on the agenda?
Name is Glenn Furstenberg, 46524 267th Street, Sioux Falls. I would just like to, I concur with what Amy had said. Also, I would like to note that Mueller's also had an attorney representing them through this whole process who had almost a year to do the research and bring all this information to you guys. And we had asked that several times, that the research be done, brought in front of the board so you guys can make an informed decision. That information wasn't provided. They kind of just skated over the top to my appearance, and you guys passed something that was given very little information, that very little information was given to you, and that's why it got passed. What Amy has researched and has brought forward, and you guys have copies of it, is the true ordinance. And it is county ordinance and is also state ordinance. I think it's a grave mistake that needs to be cleared up. Also, I would like to address that. I don't know if you guys heard, but we had a fire in our backyard over this last weekend. Not at Mueller's, but on that same road. Within an hour, burned 100 acres out there of grassland. The only reason I'm bringing that up is because I had back in my pasture, I had a pile of firewood. Small pile, probably 10 foot by 20 foot, but it was some old logs. That fire actually, when they got it put out, it started up again at 2 o'clock in the morning. Then the fire department was back out, put that pile of logs out, and it started up again at 7 o'clock in the morning again. Fire department was back out, put that out. And so the times that they put it out, the last time they put it out, the fire department told me the only way they're gonna get that fire out is by dumping dirt on. So I got my loader tractor out and smothered it out with dirt. My concern is that, again, with Mueller's out there, if they have a fire, and I know I brought this all up to you guys before, how are they ever gonna put those logs out? Fire department shared that when they spray water, they can only spray water on the top of the logs, but the logs burn from the bottom up. And so they can't get to them. The only way to get to them is unstack them, turn them over, and spray them again. And keep spraying them because they heat from the core, from the inside of the log out. It's a real grave concern out there. If those logs ever catch on fire, I'm not sure. The fire department also told me it could take about a month for a fire to go out if it's in a log. A log will burn for a month. That is a concern, because if they have them piled out there, there's no way to get to them. So again, I just want you to know that for your information. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else care to speak? Okay, then we'll move on. At this time, the Planning Commission will consider the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are perceived to be non-controversial and meet all the requirements of the codes and regulations. The consent agenda will be acted on in one motion with no public hearing on the items unless a member of the public, the commission, or staff requests the item be removed from the consent agenda. The minutes from the February 26, 2024 meeting are included in the consent agenda. Next, I'll read each item on the consent agenda and ask if there are any issues or comments from the Planning Commission or the audience. If any member of the Planning Commission or the audience would like to be heard on the item, please raise your hand and the item will be moved to the regular agenda to allow you to address the commission later in the meeting. Any items remaining on the consent agenda will be approved by the Planning Commission with the conditions recommended by staff.
Madam Chair, I need to recuse myself from the consent agenda based off of item 5.
Thanks, Ryan. Item number 1 is the approval of the minutes of the February 26, 2024 meeting. Item number 2 is conditional use permit 24-08 to exceed 2,400 square feet of accessory building area requesting 4,128 square feet on the property legally described as Tract 1, Dawson's Second Edition, Southeast Quarter, Southwest Quarter, Section 12, Township 102 North, Range 50 West. That is in Benton Township. Petitioner is Monty Burgraff. He's also the property owner. Location is 47130 258th Street. Is there anyone in the audience that cares to address this item? Item number 3 is conditional use permit 24-09 to exceed 3,600 square feet of accessory building area, requesting 4,950 square feet on the property legally described as Tract 15, Indian Hills Estates. There is an exception of Lot A, end of exception, North Half, Section 8, Township 101 North, Range 48 West. That is in Split Rock Township. Petitioner is Ryan Brower. He's also the property owner. Location is 2224 North Indian Hills Trail. Anyone in the audience care to address this item? Item number 4 is conditional use permit 24-10 to allow a public utility facility on the property legally described as the north half, the west half, the northeast quarter, and the northeast quarter, the northwest quarter. There is an exception of Hansel Tract 1 and accept Hansel Tract A and accept the northeast quarter, the northeast quarter, the northwest quarter, and another exception of the north 175 feet, east 150 feet, southeast quarter, northwest quarter, and accept the east 33 feet, the northeast quarter, northwest quarter, and accept the north 550 feet, the west 320 feet, the east 972.1 feet, northeast quarter, northwest quarter, Section 7, Township 101 North, Range 50 West. That is in Wayne Township. Petitioner is Callie Hannigan and Northern Natural Gas. Property owner is John Hansel, approximately 3.5 miles west of Sioux Falls on 263rd. Anyone from the audience wishes to address this item?
Madam Chair, the staff would like to address this item and remove it from the consent agenda.
Okay. Number 5 is conditional use permit 24-12 to transfer one building eligibility from the northwest quarter to the southwest quarter, the northwest quarter, all in the northwest quarter. There's an exception of H-1 and accept the south 503.5 feet, the north 1,679.5 feet, and the west 728 feet. That is the end of the exception. Section 20, Township 104 North, Range 51 West. That is in Tiope Township. Petitioner is Rodney Vandervliet. He's also the property owner. It's located approximately 3 miles northwest of Colton. Anyone from the audience wishes to address this item? Okay, Commissioners, I would address a motion for all items except number 4, which will be removed to the regular agenda.
I'll move approval for the remaining consent agenda items.
I'll second that.
I have a motion to approve all items except number 4. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Move on to the regular agenda. Kevin, you want to address number 4?
Good evening, I'm Kevin Hookman from the County Planning Department. As you read just recently, the conditional use permit number 2410 is to allow a public utility facility on the property illegally described as red before and on the screen. The petitioner is Northern Natural Gas. There's the location. The applicant is requesting to construct a public utility facility for natural gas pipeline structures The structures do contain structures that are over 120 square feet, which requires the conditional use permit for a public utilities facility. Generally, the applicant is aware of the staff report and the conditions, and I was going to bring up specifically condition number 6 because that's what we're going to be addressing. The applicant requested that the condition number 6 be reworded in order to allow the possibility to work with the county highway department for an access, so they can either use an existing access or work with the highway department for an access permit. And this other new language is presented in red on this. So the black is the existing language and the red is the proposed language for the new condition. Being that this was on the consent agenda, you have the staff report with the staff recommendation of approval with the conditions with this one amended. So is there any questions?
Any questions for him? Guess not. Anyone from the audience care to speak to this item? Okay, commissioners?
I guess, Madam Chair, if I may, I think the revised language seems appropriate. I mean, we're obviously not approving that they have or are automatically going to get another access point. I think that's something that obviously the Highway County Department can assess, and it's, what's deemed appropriate or safe. So I don't think we're stepping outside our lane, so to speak. So with that said, I guess I'd make a motion to approve with the revised language for item 6.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve with number 6 with the new wording. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. If your item has been approved, you're free to go. Move on to old business.
So under old business, I'd like to just give a quick report, update on the subcommittee that is dealing with our density zoning and the comp plan density zoning. We met 2 weeks ago maybe, and we had a good meeting. The entire task force was able to attend. We have members that represent the building and trades industry, Sioux Falls Development, also members that are representing the ag community, Paul Kosbuth. If you remember, Paul was on our planning commission for a while. He's the owner of A1 Development. They do a lot of consulting for dairies and feedlots and such. And Susie O'Hara, you probably all know her. She's also a former planning commissioner and farmer, or involved in the farming community. So we had a good meeting. We started meeting at 11:30, went to about 1 o'clock, quarter to 1, and we identified some options to potentially address some development concerns. One of the items that we talked about was ADUs, accessory dwelling units, and looking at maybe creating a framework to allow some limited ADUs. And that is going to be the primary focus of our next meeting, which is April 10th. We'll be meeting at the Human Services Building, which is next to the Coliseum. And at that meeting, we will be discussing accessory dwelling units and potentially how we could get those, adopt an ordinance potentially to address allowing some limited ADUs. I will also back up and say that we have 2 planning commissioners that are serving, Adam and And Mike, yes, Mike. And Mike was unable to attend because he was in Pier. That's why I don't recall, but yes. So we did provide our members of the task force the information. So the first meeting was really dealt with some of the information that we had already touched on and presented to you on density zoning and some relative information on values, and those charts that Kevin and Mason had prepared showing how, as you move up in density, the value of property increases. So just a recap, I think the task force, the subcommittee is going well. We're meeting again on April 10th, and then we also have another meeting set in May. I can't remember the date of the meeting, but at that May meeting, we'll be discussing building eligibilities and potentially some ideas like transfers of building eligibilities beyond just neighborhood or beyond adjacent property owners or properties. So we're looking at some ideas on potentially being able to move building eligibilities out of the floodplain and make those available. So you'd have a sending area and a receiving area. So those are all items that we're considering. So that'll be our May meeting of that subcommittee. And at the May meeting, then we will decide if any further meetings are warranted. So I'm pleased with the progress and just wanted to report that to you.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for putting that together.
Well, it was all of us working together.
Yeah, it worked. Okay, we'll move on to new business. Kevin?
All right, so I'm Kevin Hookman from County Planning Department. Under new business here, we've been doing the updates to 2035 comp plan. I handed out just tonight, sorry it's so late, the chapter for environmental stewardship with some revised, updated writings in this. And I'll hit some of the highlights on this. So there's the list of plan chapters here. We've kind of skipped over rural conservation. If you recall, we started on that and then we decided to start working on the task force, hence why we haven't presented anything new for rural conservation quite yet. So under the environmental stewardship chapter, there are several subjects, including land resources, parks, water resources, agricultural drainage, wastewater treatment, and stormwater management. So under the ag resources, here's the map of prime farmland. The USDA hasn't updated their maps per se, so really the new map of prime farmland is the same as the old with new city growth shown on it. So then the parks and open space map really hasn't changed. It's going to be parks, state parks, county parks, with the highlighted greenways along the rivers, which aren't necessarily public, but it's definitely a waterway. You can use them as for kayaking, for example, down the rivers.
So Kevin, one question back on that, on the open space. Does the new map show the expansion to the state park at Garrettson?
You know what? I'm not sure that it does.
Because
Because that would take care of this.
that's quite a chunk of property, so we
Yep.
do need to, we'll have to include that, because what's it called? The state park up there,
Yep.
Palisades State Park, expanded, so we'll need to include that.
Yep. Then the water resources, so there's a discussion in the plan about floodplain specifically, and a little bit about aquifers, but more about the floodplain. So I have here the old map of the floodplain, kind of small, sorry about that. But then the new map, the major difference on that is that there was an adoption that included this red area here, which would be floodway, which is a whole kind of another category of requirements that have to be met in order to develop in the floodway. This being said, as we are writing this, these are always changing. They're in motion. There is already preliminary plan, or preliminary maps that FEMA has released for almost the entire county. So a lot of this is going to change, and a lot of it is going to change, not very much, but generally speaking, the new maps follow better real-world contours. So if you line up the old map, you'll find places where there is a house in the floodplain shown on the old map, but it's clearly on top of the hill. Well, the new maps are actually do a whole lot better at adjusting for, okay, there's a contour there, this house is not in the floodplain, sort of thing. So that's something just to keep in mind as we move forward, is just continual updates of the FEMA floodplain maps. And then the other major updates in this is when we wrote this plan in 2014 and 15, there was a large section of this that worked with agricultural drainage. Since in 2017, the county commission repealed the drainage ordinance for agricultural drainage. I don't think that agricultural drainage will be something that the commission will take up in the near future or in the plan term for this. The other thing that was changed is stormwater management. When we were writing this, the EPA was going to require certain entities and groups that are enough population to do what's called the municipal separate storm sewer. I think there should be another S in there. Systems, MS4. That's what the 4 is. There's 4 S's. And since then, the state has more or less has said, okay, we're not going to require this, or we're not going to push this program forward. So that specific reference to the MS4 program has been removed, but stormwater drainage is still addressed in the comp plan as you read through that, and there is still goals to include stormwater management in our comp plan, but we're no longer referencing specifically that program. So that's, yes, and here's parts of the stormwater management that is addressed. We do address trying to work with builders and developers regarding best management practices when that's applicable, or using low impact design. Sometimes one is more appropriate than the other, kind of trade-off of when, how best to manage stormwater. This is be an example of low impact design. This was what was in the book, and we'll keep it in the book, showing like a grass waterway. To do it properly, there should even be like changes in grass types. So higher up, you'd have a stiff grass, and then less stiff grass that can lay down when the water runs and then dry out and stand back up. Biofiltration, riparian buffer areas, perhaps permeable surfaces or places for water to get into the ground. Those are all parts of low impact design. And I guess that's where the chapter more or less ends. And you can take this, sorry that the printer, we were having printer problems today, printer and copy machine problems, so it's a little faded. But yeah, if you want to take this back and read through it and kind of look at what the comp plan says now, and if you have your current comp plan, you can kind of compare the differences. You'll see that generally speaking, I think that we can move forward with minimal changes in this chapter. Is there any questions?
Madam Chair, one clarifying question here. So what you gave us today is different? You've made textual changes to this so we
Yes.
can compare? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And then, Madam Chair, if I could continue, just when we talk about fun, sexy topics like wastewater, our friend Tyler Torridson, who I think we've got on that task force, not to blend, I think that task force has its own mission, but I'm interested in knowing that the city of Sioux Falls has expanded wastewater, and now the city of Hartford is going to has the federal funding that's not just a pipe dream, that's going to happen over some course of time. Does that impact this section, or is that more just on future potential urbanized development, like heavy industrial that now has a big manufacturing plant, could come to some area near Hartford and have access to wastewater and things like that. How and where does that news factor in to future growth planning?
Sure. So I guess for that sort of thing, largely speaking, when there gets to be like a municipal wastewater, that is then governed in their comp plans. So if Hartford adds capacity to try to, say, lure in more industrial growth, it would be put into their comp plan as they expand outward. I guess it could be something we could address in like the growth management and just kind of how and future land use plan as cities and municipalities expand.
Okay. Yeah, just kind of setting down a marker that that's the thing. As fast as you can make these comprehensive plans, some of the facts on the ground change, and so trying to stay at a high level here, but just knowing that that is a future growth area. I think we'd want to, and I think maybe that just sets down a marker too of communicating with our municipality friends to have comp plans that don't clash with one another. So obviously, the city of Hartford will have some new thoughts on things given that fact.
And I think it's also appropriate that we probably can address that in this section and just somewhere note that that Hartford is in the preliminary stages of doing this sort of regional wastewater system. I think that's appropriate. We can note that and it probably even show it on our comp plan because it is, what might be perceived as being relatively far out from the city because it's at that by the exit to the Buffalo Ridge exit there by Semcast. So, which is quite a ways from Hartford proper. So we could probably show that on the map. Maybe, I guess I probably need to educate myself on how they plan on managing that. Is it going to be opened up to other developer? I sort of assumed it would be limited to the members in this alliance that are providing the funding, but something we can research a little bit more and probably add it in there. And also, it might also be mentioned in the growth management part because those cities now have a better capacity to handle residential development, and which is a good thing for our community and probably where we want to funnel more residential development to those areas that have the infrastructure to handle them.
Yeah, great points. Thank you.
Anyone else have the questions for him? Thank you.
I guess, Madam Chair, I guess I have to give him one more. Another stakeholder in this when we talk about environmental groups would be, my friend Jay up in Brookings.
East Dakota Water.
East Dakota Water, just from the environmental and how we're just one piece of a broader puzzle in some of these waterways, but how we treat our water affects people downstream and how upstream. So when you're thinking about a comprehensive plan, that would even maybe take us one level of abstraction further to talk to some other counties and groups like that are amalgamations of local leaders all the way up the Big Sioux area. So just to get some input, if there's some feedback he would have on the before and after of this, Jay Gilbertson. So yeah, I would appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.